their followers. We watch what happened to their engagement rate, and we have some really interesting stuff to share with you about how often you should really be posting. Basically, we feel like we have some pretty definitive numbers that point you in the direction of, spoiler alert, posting more often. But we'll get there. We'll kind of get through that. And to help us along, we have the wonderful Mike Alton from the Social Media Hat. Hello, Mike.
Hello, thanks for having me.
It is an absolute pleasure. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about yourself and your website.
Well, I obviously write at thesocialmediahat.com. It's a personal blog for me. I'm the full-time CMO for SiteSell, where we help solopreneurs build online businesses. But the Social Media Hat's where I try to explore what's happening with social media, what's changing with algorithms, which we're going to talk about today with the various platforms. And I love experimenting. I've done some pretty interesting experiments with Instagram myself, so this is going to be a really interesting conversation.
Yeah, I was checking out your Instagram, and I'm noticing that you have some posts that have sort of a 50% engagement rate. You know, half of your followers are liking them. That's pretty impressive. So I'm looking forward to getting some great insight from you today, Mike. Hot off of social media marketing world as well.
Yes, good time.
Yeah, as I understand it. Great, so I'll give you a little bit more detail on this study quickly before we jump in. We did a couple of things with the numbers to make sure that they really made sense. The first thing was we excluded accounts that were smaller than 100 followers, just because they behave very differently and very uniquely. And also we excluded accounts that posted less than 10 times a month. Because again, we're looking at percentages, and it's very easy to massively increase the percentage of times that you post if you only post once a month. Or you just post twice a month, and now you're 200% more posts. So we excluded those people as well. Just a little bit of insight into the data there. But other than that, it's everybody, and it's pretty interesting. So we'll pull up the first slide that we have here, the first graphic for you all, and what we looked at for this was how the amount of likes that you get in any given month changes based on the amount that you post. So these are for accounts that post less than once per week at the top. They get, on average, in this data set of 100,000 plus folks, they get on average 1,000 likes. Now, these are accounts of all different sizes lumped in here. But interestingly, we separated them out for the study. We looked at 3 buckets, but it was pretty much the same story, a little bit different, but more or less the same story. So we put them back together for this study for simplicity's sake, because basically it's the same. It's more or less the same data, no matter how you kind of slice and dice it. So 1 post per week, 1,000 likes for your account. 1 to 6 posts per week, 4,383, and then if you go up to 7 posts per week, which is 1 post per day, you're pushing it up to 13,677. So that's the average total post likes in 1 month. Did that surprise you at all, Mike? What do you make of that?
Yeah, absolutely, because I think, like you pointed out in the article itself, one would have simply looked for a relative increase in likes compared to the post. So if you post twice a week and then you up that to 3 times a week, then you'd expect 33% more likes.
Right.
And it would just step at a normal pace. But what you're seeing there is almost exponential growth in likes, and that was very surprising.
So one of the things that I noticed, and because it's a real privilege to be this close to this kind of data, is actually looking at the individual accounts that were growing the amount that they were posting. It seems to skew quite heavily in favor of marketers who are really thinking about Instagram. If you're going to double or triple or move to 1 post per week, that seems often to correlate with people getting smarter about how they do Instagram as well. So they might say things like, we talked to some of them, and they might say things like, I noticed that this type of content was what was most popular, so I did more of that. So I think that what's happening here is these are smart folks that are smart marketers that are posting more, and they're doing it smarter as well as harder or more often. Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because anything that we want to do more often, whether it's post to Instagram, post to Facebook, create blog content, the first question most people ask, most of my clients always come to me and say, okay, well, what am I going to talk about? What am I going to say?
Right.
I'm kind of struggling right now to post once a week to Instagram. How am I going to post 2 or 4 times? And so there has to be thought that goes into that, to conversation,
right,
sometimes with an outside expert, to figure out what that looks like. And as you've basically pointed out, when you have that conversation, the result is an improvement, an increase in quality of the individual posts themselves. And that may be one of the main reasons why we see an increase in like rate,
right,
not just total overall likes, but the individual posts are getting more likes than they ever used to because they're better.
Right, yes. So I'm interested in your experience here. You post regularly, and how are you finding the content? That's a big challenge for people. How to find enough content, and what have you found that works for you, and kind of what was that journey like?
Well, I'll add a big fat disclaimer here and say that I don't post regularly right now. I go back and forth because for the social media hat, it's just me. I don't have a VA or a staff.
Right.
And so I'll end up shifting my focus and where I'm putting my time, frankly, into where I'm interested in experimenting. So like right now I'm experimenting a little more with Facebook and Twitter than I ever used to, and I'm probably going to be moving into Pinterest very soon. A while back I was experimenting with Instagram, and when I was posting 2 or 3 times a day, at least 2 times a day.
Right.
And that was a big increase from before that experiment. Before that experiment took place, I was posting very infrequently. I didn't have a set schedule. It was somewhat random. I didn't have a strategy, and let alone any specific tactics in place for how I was going to post. So I changed that after talking with Rebecca Radice and Peg Fitzpatrick, actually at last year's Social Media Marketing World. And I found for myself exactly what you're showing in this study, which is, I guess, partly why it isn't as surprising to me as it might have been, because I'd already kind of seen that.
Right.
I just expected it to be true across the board. But I saw that when I put some thought into the kind of content that I wanted to post, I figured out how to replicate that on a regular basis. It worked. It was crazy how well it worked for not just increasing my engagement, but increasing everything else that matters about having a good, active social presence.
Yeah. So let's take a look at the next graphic, because here's another thing that matters for having an engaged social presence. Actually, let's flip to the following one.
Keep losing my mouse.
Here we go. Yes, this one I think is kind of a better segue with followers, because what we observed was basically the more you post, you massively increase your follower growth rate as well. A surprising amount, and this is follower growth rate over 3 months. So this is pretty rapid growth. And what we're seeing is if you post less than once per week, 14% growth. If you post 1 to 6 posts per week, 26% growth. But 7+ posts per week, or 1 post per day, was 56% follower growth over that period. This is a big lever for follower growth, is what this is telling me. Yeah. Well, I mean, how did that strike with you? How did that sit?
Yeah, that was really interesting, because this is where Instagram is so different from other networks, right? Because mostly, at a very core level, when you share to Instagram, the only people who can see that post is your followers.
Right.
Let's use hashtags. And I think that's what we're seeing here, is we're seeing that, as we talked about earlier, people made a decision, marketers, businesses, bloggers, they made a decision to post more often. And as part of that decision, they had to come up with a strategy for what to post, how to post, and so on. And any good strategy that you read about posting to Instagram is going to say you have to use the right hashtags and more of them, up to 30 hashtags for every single post. So every single time that they're posting to Instagram, if they're using better hashtags, and I'm assuming that they were, they're expanding the reach of their individual posts and their profile overall quite a bit more than what they were seeing before. And that's how they're getting in front of, or one of the ways that they're getting in front of more and more people who might potentially want to follow that account.
And you mentioned at the top Instagram algorithm. And it's interesting that there's additional likes going around for these accounts. And now there's additional followers. And you're tying this together with, hey, they're probably doing more. They're probably, using the right hashtags. How do you think that all of that plays with the algorithm?
That is exactly it. At the bottom line is that the more often you post and the better those posts are, the more likes you're going to get, the more hashtags you use, the more exposure you're getting outside of your followers, and therefore, again, increased numbers of likes because just the overall quality is better. Instagram's watching that. Just like Facebook looks at the quality of our posts on that platform, Instagram is looking at the quality of the posts on its platform. And if your posts are doing well by Instagram standards, which means people tend to double tap that post as they're swiping by it in the feed, then Instagram is going to say, well, more people might like this.
Yeah.
So you're basically, like you said, tweaking the algorithm.
Yeah. So you get in front of more people, and of course you can get you could become one of the featured posts in a top hashtag as well. A top post in a hashtag. That's if you're getting more likes, and as well, you're probably, if you're using more hashtags, you're getting more experience of what hashtags are working. We're just getting smarter, I guess, as marketers on this platform.
That's right.
Yeah, okay, so now might be a good time for us to kind of ask if anybody has any questions, and also just go ahead and share in the feed your own Instagram profile if you want to kind of surface that up for other people. Just say hi, and this is very much a community event, so let's start talking. It sounds like Melissa says we've got a question, so...
Yep, we have a few questions
here. A few, all right.
I asked them to try and stump you guys, so we'll see if they get it.
Oh, thanks.
Bring it on.
So Felicia and Jody have kind of similar questions here. Felicia asks, what's the maximum you should post per day? And Jody asks, how much is too much to post daily?
Good questions. You want to go with that, Mike?
Yeah,
okay.
Sure. So there's no technical limit to how often you can post. It's really subjective, and in my opinion, this is a pure opinion, it's based on what your audience is going to tolerate.
Yeah.
So to me, that's something to experiment with. Now, most of us probably are going to run out of things to say fairly rapidly, but if you follow certain top Instagram accounts in your niche, whatever that is. Like, for instance, when I was doing my experiment, I was posting mostly motivational images and quotes, thought-provoking quotes, tips from MySpace, a lot of graphics like that that would really resonate with my target audience. And so I looked at who was doing really, really well in that space. A great example is Nathan Chan of Founder Magazine. You look at their posts, they're fantastic.
Okay.
There were a bunch of others in that space. And they were posting sometimes as often as once an hour. I mean, it was frequent for some of those big accounts. And I'm assuming that that's something they built up to. I'm assuming that they didn't start posting once per hour when they just form their account. So they gradually acclimate their audience to an increased posting schedule if that works.
Right.
For them, if that works for you. So that's something to try. If you're posting once a day right now, double it and run with that for a while. And make sure, number one, you're okay with that yourself. You're able to keep up with that schedule, and it's not feeling stressful, and you're getting benefits out of it. Number two, are you seeing an increase or a decrease in engagement from your audience? Did they seem to appreciate that extra level of posting? And if so, double it again. I did the same thing on Twitter. I used to post 10 times a day. I doubled it. Saw no fall off in engagement, quite the opposite, in fact. I saw an increase in follower rate, just like we're talking about here on Instagram. So what I do, I doubled it again. I now post 40 to 50 times a day on Twitter. I'm not losing followers, quite the opposite. So that's my take. I don't know if you have another
I mean,
perspective.
very briefly, I read a study by Union Metrics that was big brands, and they found it was only a study of 50 accounts, I believe, but what they found was that there was no drop off up to 4 times a day on Instagram for big brands in the data set, and I doubt that they had any or many big brands that were posting more than that. Or they weren't, they didn't really share data beyond that. So that suggests to me, similar to you. I mean, a big brand with 100,000 plus followers, there's an appetite for good content from that, and it's not going to be satiated by 1 post a day, 2, 3, even 4. Now, the big challenge here, of course, is where do you get that content? How do you double that amount? How do you do that without having Instagram or Twitter, take over your life? And do you have any tips there?
Yeah, because nobody has ever said, no, please don't share anymore because it's just too funny. It's too insightful. I can't take it anymore.
And the worst they can do is not like it, and then you'll have a signal, right? Oh, when I start posting my 10th post a day, people don't like it. They're done.
Yeah, you can see it. I mean, it's really easy to watch. Just make a note in Evernote or something. Okay, this is the day that I started this experiment. This is exactly what I do for my major experiments. I started doubling my posts today. And this is the tactic that I'm taking with this content. And, I go a week, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever the case might be, and measure. How was my engagement? How did that compare to the previous period? What was my follower growth looking like? Did I get any negative feedback at all? I mean, it's possible. I've done some experiments, like I experiment with pop-up ads. Well, people will tell me when they don't like my pop-up ads.
Right.
So those are all those things to look into. But to your point, where do you get that content? There's no magic bullet for that because it is going to vary wildly, from business to business. But it starts with coming up, to me, with ideas for themes. Themes being not just specific things that you can say, but umbrellas of topics you can talk about. Like I mentioned, in my case, it was a natural fit to use like motivational quotes or quotes about entrepreneurship. That's something we do at SiteSell for the Solo Build account all the time because it makes sense. That fits our target audience. So we can go out and we can build up libraries of entrepreneurship quotes.
Right.
I can go out and find countless quotes about how to use social media, how to communicate via blogging, things I've said, although I'm not a big fan of quoting myself, but things other people have said, and create tons of graphics out of that. That's not hard at all.
And one of the things that folks with who use Tailwind for Instagram enjoy about the platform is that essentially you can stock as many or as many slots of posts as you want into the future, in an hour on your weekend or what have you. And then when it's time to post, it pushes that notification to your phone, and you can just basically swipe and post it there in Instagram, which basically allows you to sort of time box more effectively. So if you want to be posting every day or twice a day, you can do it you can do it very easily, essentially, just with a swipe and preparing that content beforehand.
No doubt. Yeah, because what I'm talking about when it comes to experimenting, that implies that there's a beginning and there's an end to the experiment, right? So if you're really going to experiment with this and you decide, okay, I'm going to test a particular theme or topic or style or frequency, whatever the case might be, you can go to Canva or Adobe Spark or whatever tool you're going to use and decide, okay, I'm going to let this experiment run for 4 weeks. I'm going to post twice a day, Monday through Friday, for a total of about 20 posts. So I need to create 20 graphics. That you don't need to create 100, 200. You only need to create enough for the length of that experiment, load those up in a Tailwind, and let that run.
Right.
And then go back and see how it worked. If it was great, okay, then iterate and improve. If it was awful, come up with another idea. But that might help some of you who might be thinking, oh my gosh, where am I going to create all this content? Well, you don't have to create all the content.
Right. Run
You
an
only have to create
experiment.
enough to get you through the next week or 2 weeks or the length of the experiment. And you can do that in a bit of a bulk/batch process.
I think that's really important as well, because to run an experiment, because one of the things that, if you're not posting every day, I'm going to assume that you're not a hardcore Instagram user already, one of the things you need to establish is that Instagram is going to work for you as a platform. And this would be a really good way of establishing that. And of course, Instagram works differently from other networks like Pinterest and Facebook. And one of the things that people notice about it is that since you can't click through posts, it doesn't tend to drive the same amount of traffic, at least the volume of traffic, as some of the other networks like Pinterest. And so, what is the advantage of Instagram? A lot of people who are very used to, or who are hungry for traffic and used to measuring the success of their social presence by the amount of traffic that they send to their website. How would you answer that? What do you think Instagram is good for?
Yeah, that is a great question because, again, it is different. And you can't just compare it to your Facebook posting activity and expect to draw the same conclusions. It just doesn't work that way. So for most brands, Instagram's best purpose is branding. It's brand awareness. It's helping to communicate to a growing audience who you are as a brand and why they should care about you, why they should be interested in what you have to say. And that plays to the kind of posting that I talked about a moment ago. You can, however, drive some traffic. And what people at Jeff C have seen is that the quality of that traffic is amazing.
There you
it's
go.
Not quantity, it's the quality.
Yeah.
Because if somebody sees something that you've said on Instagram and they want to go to your site, as you've illustrated, they now have to tap on your profile and then tap the link in your bio.
Yeah.
And maybe they're on the page they want, maybe they're not, which means they might have to tap once or twice more to get to the resource they're looking for. It just depends on whether or not you are specifically talking about, say, a blog post and you've updated the link in your bio to go to that blog post, or something else is going on. But the bottom line is that they're minimum 2 taps, maybe 4 taps away from reading the content on your site that they wanted to read. And if somebody's going to go through all that trouble, they're going to read every word. And they're going to stick around, and they're going to tap around to a couple other places on your site. That's the kind of fan that we'd all love to have, not the ones that tap through from Facebook or click through from Facebook and then back out because it wasn't what they're really interested in. These people want to hear from you. So when we're looking at the metrics, you look at the time on site and the number of page views in their entire session, not just one-to-one traffic from Instagram.
Right. And you see, we see a lot of folks having success who are e-commerce and Etsy store owners and things like that. And really there, the question is, what do your purchases look like from Instagram? It's very easy to track. And when we talk to them, we find that a lot of them get a lot of, in fact, often for Etsy sellers, it may be their number one source of sales. Is their Instagram audience. So very much surfacing products with beautiful descriptions and then having those people jump through hoops to get to your product, that actually may help as far as sales are concerned. And that quality of that traffic is definitely borne out there by those people's experience. And then there's a whole other thing as well. If you're a blogger, having the kind of leverage with sponsors and things of having 20, 30, 40, who knows, 1,000 followers on Instagram, that a lot of sponsors are asking, what's your Instagram look like? How many followers do you have? Because they're aware that it's a really strong place to get branding impressions. You think about that screen and just that one image, that you're seeing floating past you. That's pretty impactful.
Right.
So, any other questions?
We have a ton.
A ton. Okay, wonderful.
And lots of people sharing their accounts, so be sure to check out everyone's account and follow them, which is great to see. So Melissa asks, I find I get engagement when I post, parentheses, not a lot, but from a teeny tiny, but I don't get new followers from it. What am I doing wrong?
Well, first
I
question.
would first look at the hashtags that you use.
Right with you.
Yeah, make sure that you're using at least 20 hashtags. Some people push that all the way to 30. Some people like to leave some room for other hashtags in the comments. That's kind of really personal preference as far as I'm concerned. I tend to average about 28 hashtags per post. In fact, I have them. You can have them saved inside Tailwind, or if you're using the Instagram app natively, I have it as a short code, keystroke or whatever it's called on your phone, where I just put in tag one and my hashtags come up.
Right.
Having a lot of hashtags and having the right hashtags that we talked about earlier, that's what's going to make sure that your individual posts break out from your current follower base. Because if those are the people seeing your posts, you just can't get new followers. So hashtags are it.
And we actually did the last study that we did was about contests on Instagram, and I'm not sure what position you're in, if you have anything that you can give away, whether you're a blogger or a solopreneur, but contests are actually, we found, a really effective way to grow followers, because the mechanics of a contest often require that people follow your account in order to enter the contest. So some of those drop away afterwards, but I mean, we found that accounts that use contests grow significantly faster. I can't remember what it is off the top of my head, but maybe we could share that blog post in the Facebook feed, and you can kind of check that out too.
Okay, so if I can get my phone to work with me. Sorry. Let's see. We had a question from Mike about how you add your logo to your Instagram images.
How Mike specifically adds his logo.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah, there's two different apps that I use. I mentioned Canva earlier. Canva is what I use on desktop. I use that to create my blog post images and some of the other graphics that I might use. And it's good to mention that, because I talked earlier about that strategy of sharing motivational quotes and that sort of thing. That's got to be supplemented with something else. So in my case, that traffic to my site is important. That is the end goal, to get you off of Instagram into my site. So once a week, or however often I was publishing at that time, I would share a version of my blog graphic that was tweaked, made square for Instagram. And now I can schedule that from desktop using Tailwind. But for everything else, for those motivational quotes, those were all created from my phone using an app called Typorama. And again, it was something Peg probably showed me last year, and it's really fantastic, because when you download the app, you can set it up so that it has a watermark by default on every graphic you create. Nice. And in my case, it's the logo. So I downloaded the logo to my phone, then uploaded it into the app, and positioned it where I wanted it. I don't remember if it's in the bottom or wherever it is. You can change the opacity, the size, do all that kind of stuff, get it perfect. And then from that point on, every single time you create a new image, the logo's right there. And the beauty of this app is, when you start it off, it uses Pixabay.com to source images. Now, you can pull from your camera roll if you want to, but if you just want a nice background for a quote, Pixabay is great. You can find mountains, streams, trees, whatever you want, and then tap to add some text on the front. Your logo's already there,
right?
And now you've got the perfect Instagram image.
That's nice.
And would you mind saying the name of that app again?
Yeah, it's Typorama. Typorama. The other thing that I liked about Typorama is that when you put in your text, it has a bunch of different font styles. And I think mine is the one I tended to use all the time was Skyline or Skyscraper, something like that. And you tap that and it changes the font. But as you continue to tap that font style, it'll rearrange the text so that it's in a block or different things.
Right.
It looks very much like you've spent some time, with the typography. It's not just a blob of text.
Right.
It's sometimes got borders or other graphics, whatever you want.
But really simple on the mobile.
Yeah, it's so simple. I mean, I could create an Instagram post in a minute or less.
That's great.
Engagement we talked about, and that's, I think, what a lot of people are looking for, is being able to do this quickly. Absolutely.
There's lots of problems to solve for folks here, and that sounds like a great solution. So I was thinking we might pop over to the blog post the last blog post that we wrote, and it's kind of off of the back of this post that we're or this study that we're talking about at the moment. It's called The Simple Secret to Faster Growth on Instagram. And if you scroll down, we just published this recently. If you scroll down, you see basically we have 4 accounts that increased their amount that they post and then grew. This account is an e-commerce store. It increased the amount it posted 6 times, and then grew likes by like 983% or something. But they also, you can kind of see them getting better as well as they go. Here's a food blogger posting 2 times more often, growing followers 258%. And this actually is the one I wanted to talk about here, this food blogger, because we're talking a lot about ways that you can improve, ways that you can quickly create more content, I suppose. The content problem behind posting more, right? And one of her solutions here is you look at this feed and it looks consistent, right? It looks like she made all of these recipes. But if you start looking closer, half of these or thereabouts are actually regrams of other people's food, and half of them are her own recipes. So here's one that's her own recipe. And there she's got, she had a link there, obviously that doesn't work, so the link doesn't work. She probably has it in her bio too. And then this one, the previous one, is a recipe created by the talented Foodness Gracious. So here she's mentioned them, she's regramming this gram. And you'll notice that this one actually has more likes than the previous one. Her followers don't necessarily know or recognize or care, I would say, that these are regrams. They appreciate the curation effort that she's going to here, and because the feed is so consistent, she totally seems to get away with it. And she in fact grew her, she posted 2 times as often, but her following grew 250% in just 3 months. So she's doing something right. And what do you make of that and the idea of regramming? Do you think that that's a legitimate sort of way to go, Mike?
Yeah, I love how you make it sound like she's stealing.
I make it sound like she
got away with regramming.
It's too good to be true. No, I mean she's obviously. Sorry, you go. I'm sure you're.
No, I think that's great, and I think it's a fantastic case study for businesses who are very wary of doing that on Instagram. It's not something everybody does because it's not easy to do within the app. It's not like Facebook. I mean, I feel like a broken record. I keep saying that. But, every other social network, the share button's right there on every single post. It's super easy. It's expected. You read the most basic level content. I wrote about, people who are getting Google Plus wrong. It's because they're not sharing. All right? You can't say that about Instagram.
Right.
So it seems a little awkward, a little counterintuitive.
Right.
To be using a separate app to share somebody's content on Instagram, it really maybe does feel a little bit like you're getting away with something. But as we've seen, the audience, at least her audience, enjoyed it. So guess what, folks? There's another experiment for you. You can use Tailwind, and there's other options where you can share other people's Instagram posts into your feed and see what your audience thinks about it. See if that doesn't help you get to that next level of posting frequency.
Right. And Melissa, I think this might be a good time to go back to her profile and show us the browser app and how Tailwind can help you regram. So here we are in her profile. I was thinking of skinning it up here with like that. So if you click there, basically that shows you all of the posts that you could share, and you can quickly regram from these, and they'll go straight into your Tailwind queue with attribution to the account that you're regramming from. So you can see in these suggested comments, suggested descriptions, regram via. Best practice is that you should also comment on the original post and say, hey, I'd like to regram this to my account, is that okay? But they can sit there in your drafts or in your scheduled posts, waiting, to see whether that happens or not, whether they're okay with it or not. But this is a really quick way to do it, and you can do this from a hashtag as well on Instagram. So you can be browsing a hashtag that has great content for you. Hit the browser extension up there, and that's just our browser extension, the Tailwind browser extension, and you can see this, and you can grab. I tried it. You can grab more than 10 things in a minute, and change the descriptions if you're quick. So this is a way potentially to really kind of increase your post volume. Of course, the key to it here that she demonstrates so well is that the consistency. You can't tell the difference between her posts and the posts that she's sharing. A lot of them have darker backgrounds. A lot of them are the same types of food or the same sort of genre of food. A lot of them are flat lays. There's a lot of consistency here in the choices that she's making between the regrams and her own photos. And I would encourage that, although it's not always possible.
Yeah, that's actually one of the bigger challenges to me, is how do I regram somebody else's content and it doesn't stand out like a sore thumb
right
in the feed that I'm creating? Because for a lot of us, when we're building up an Instagram feed, we're very mindful of what that looks like on the whole. I obviously shared a lot during social media marketing world, but if you're looking at my feed and you go prior to last March, you'll see that I have a checkerboard pattern. I thought that was really neat. I thought that was visually interesting, and I made sure that was the case. And the ones that aren't black and white, they're very consistent in the coloring and the theming and styling. So for me, if I want to regram somebody else, it's got to fit into that pattern, because that's what I want to create for my users is that kind of expectation. And obviously, they're not going to care. They're not going to see that in their feed on a one-by-one basis. But if they're looking at my profile, they say, "Oh, okay, I see what you're doing there, Mike. That's kind of cool." Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah. Have you seen the 9-grid preview on Tailwind where you can flip and you can see what your feed will look like when your scheduled posts are published? That can be helpful when you're visualizing. Yeah. Okay. So let's ask any questions from where we were, or maybe we'll keep moving. All right. Let's keep moving. So the next one was the second tab up here.
I'm losing my mouse here.
All righty, and here it is. So this is kind of this one was a surprise to me, honestly. I kind of was not expecting this. And what we're looking at here is we looked at accounts, whether they were increasing their frequency or not. And on an individual account by account basis, if you were either frequency unchanged, you posted 0 to 100% more, or 100% plus more posts, what happened to your engagement rate on an account by account basis? And engagement rate we calculate as likes plus comments divided by followers as a percentage. And so what that does is it normalizes somewhat for the size of your account, right? Because if you have 100,000 followers, it's a lot easier to get 1,000 likes than if you have 1,000 followers. So engagement rate kind of normalizes somewhat for that. And what we discovered was that even if if your frequency is unchanged across our data set, you experienced a 3% increase in engagement rate over those 3 months. You tended to get a little bit better, I guess, at Instagram, and your posts got a little bit more likes, a little bit more comments. But if you went 0 to 100% more posts, you went 9% higher engagement rate. And if you went 100% plus more posts, so if you more than doubled the amount of times you were posting, your engagement rate went up by 20% or 19%. So what that says is that you're not only that the more you post, the more your existing followers engage with your posts. They don't engage less with the subsequent posts, they engage more with them, to the tune of 19% if you're posting significantly more, 100% plus more. Now that stands at odds with other studies that have suggested that the more and what these other studies do often is they look at the buckets of people. They say, well, when people post, like we had before, one time less than once a week, what does their engagement rate look like? When people post, 1 to 6 times a week, what does their engagement rate look like? When they post every day, what does their engagement rate look like? But the reason why we didn't go with that methodology is because those different types of accounts look very different. If you post every day, you're likely to be a large account that has a lot of followers, and large accounts tend to have naturally lower engagement rates because Target, for example, they may have hundreds of thousands or even millions of followers, but you join Instagram, I'll like Target. You don't feel the same way that you do about them as you do about the local boutique store that you like, and you're one of only 500 people who like that store. You're going to much more likely to engage with them because you just have a more personal relationship. You know the people, etc. So anyway, so in order to remove that bias, what we did was we looked at the same accounts. So this basically, doing it this way means that it's the same sort of way of looking at the data regardless of whether you're a small account or a large account. Really the question is just how much more are you posting? And surprise to me, you post more, you actually get more engagement. Mike, what do you think about that?
Yeah, it was surprising in and of itself. It's not surprising now looking at the, some of the other data. It
Right.
makes sense. It fits.
It does
with
fit.
the rest of your findings. And again, I think the same supposition is true, that in order to post more often, there had to have been a determination made as to what they were going to post and how they were going to post. Therefore,
Yeah.
there's going to be an improvement to the posting. There's improvement over time. I guarantee you, if you download Typorama right now, your first Instagram post is going to be but your second and third ones are going to be better because
True.
as you learn the app, you're going to improve
Right.
with your ability to make judgment calls in terms of graphics and fonts and the text. So I'm not totally surprised by that. I guess the bottom line for me is that I'm really pleased to see that.
Yeah.
Because it does show that posting more often and really putting more time and effort into what you say pays off in the end.
Right. Any questions for us at this juncture? If anybody has any questions or thoughts, go ahead and share them. And actually, I think it would be useful for anybody to kind of put out the amount of times that you post per week. That would be interesting, So if you're watching this right now, just hop on and say, hey, I post once a day, or I post once a week, and maybe even a little bit about why, or the results that you've found as you've grown or shrunk the amount that you've posted.
So we had a question earlier about the demographics of Instagram and sort of how they differ from some of the other platforms out there. Maybe you could speak a little bit about that.
Really interesting question. Do you know a lot about that, Mike?
I got to be honest, I don't know a lot about the current demographics of Instagram.
I honestly, neither do I. So this is not really the question for us.
You stumped him.
You did. You stumped us. Ouch.
I mean, what I'll tell you is that I haven't seen, through my own personal engagement and activities, whether they're my accounts or some of the accounts that I work with at SiteSell or other clients, I haven't seen a big disparity in demographics.
Right.
Maybe skewed a little bit on the younger side in terms of age,
Mm-hmm.
but not in terms of gender, not in terms of geography, not in terms of interests. So to me, those hundreds of millions of people using Instagram are ripe targets for any business.
Yeah, it's so many people that more than likely your people or some of your people are on there.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I started publishing an article that now needs to be updated, but I update it every single month with how many active users were on each of the major platforms per month. And it was kind of fun to rank the social networks, but the whole point of the piece was to demonstrate that it doesn't really matter which social network you choose. If you pick one that fits your business, that fits your style of communicating,
Mm-hmm.
you're going to be able to find an audience. Because there's hundreds of millions of people
Right.
using these major networks.
Yeah. Okay. So sounds like we have a question.
Yes, we have a few more.
Actually answer the
Oh, a
question.
few more. Oh, good.
So Anna asks, how do you keep up with engaging throughout the day? Do you have any tips on that?
Are we talking really about responding to comments and things like
Right.
that? Mm-hmm.
I use Agora Pulse. That's one of my favorite apps for monitoring and for keeping up with engagement, because you can monitor multiple Instagram profiles and see it in an inbox. In fact, I tweeted about it this morning, and it's super easy to go through on the phone or on the desktop and reply or market is reviewed, whatever the case might be. And, because we got to be frank here, some of the comments you get on Instagram are spam. In fact, we talked earlier about hashtags. You're going to probably want to avoid the super mainstream hashtags like motivation, because you're going to end up filling your feed with spam comments. If you hone down those hashtags and get them into really good, relevant audiences, you're going to reach people who are going to be authentic in their comments to you, and that means those are comments that you're going to want to respond to. And what I like about using Agorapulse over the native Instagram app is, number one, you see all those comments, no matter what post they're on, in one feed. So you just go comment by comment by comment, instead of having to tap into individual posts and reply. That's number one. Number two, if you're doing any kind of boosting of your posts, or if you're creating ads in the Facebook Ads Manager and having those also appear on Instagram, comments on those posts also show up in your Agorapulse inbox.
That's good. Have you used Facebook's native way to monitor Instagram comments? That's fairly new.
Yeah, I just got access like a couple of days ago.
Oh, okay.
So I'm still kind of exploring it to see if it's all it's cracked up to be.
Right.
I suspect that it still needs a little bit of polish.
Right. Yeah, that's what we're using at the moment, and we're finding it pretty useful. Yeah.
So Charles asks, do more relevant hashtags per post mean more followers?
Yes.
Yeah.
Simple answer. Yes, absolutely.
Your best crack. That's your best crack at it. Okay, so let's move on to the final graphic that we have here for folks. And this one is sort of like the shocker, right? The big reveal at the end. So after everything that we've learned about how important it is to post at least once a day, that you grow faster, that you get more engagement, that you get more likes, this just surprised the heck out of me. That only 5% of the folks in this study, which bias towards marketers and professional bloggers, frankly, because they're kind of our members, only 5% of them are posting 7+ times per week. What did you make of that, Mike?
Well, it's funny because it did not surprise me at all.
There you go.
Posting once a day to Instagram, to a network where you don't see immediate gratification in terms of a business goal, which would be traffic or a sale or that kind of thing. The likes and engagement, that's nice, but that's not a business goal. Right. So we're talking about a network where you don't see instant gratification. That's hard to justify. So it's not easy to make a decision to utilize Instagram. It's not easy to decide to focus on Instagram.
Yeah.
And we've already touched on things like, well, it's hard to come up with content and those kinds of things. So it didn't surprise me to see such a low number of people posting at that frequency.
Yeah. Do you see opportunity there for a lot of people? 95% of people could post, could push themselves to that goal.
Yeah, that's what's really cool here, is that while they could, we know they won't. We know that 95% aren't going to do that.
That's right.
So, and that's fine, because what that means is, for those of us who are in the 95, but want to be part of the 5, that's our opportunity to stand out. Right. If your competitors aren't going to post every day, you can. And now you're getting in front of a similar audience every single day, and they aren't. They're missing out. You can take advantage of that.
Yeah. Great. Okay, any final questions?
None that are coming up right now.
Alrighty. Mike, any final words for us?
No, just to recap what we've talked about. Instagram is great. It's a very visual network, so make sure that you put some thoughts into how you can communicate not just what you do as a company, but what does your brand look like? What are your values? What are your interests? Mm-hmm. What are the interests of your target audience? What does that look like in terms of a series of images? And what kinds of stories can you tell? Those would be some of the thoughts that I would put into determining how often you can post, how much more often you can post than what you're doing now. And whatever that looks like, turn it into an experiment. Try it for at least 30 days. Try that, and then iterate, pivot, whatever you need to do till you find a combination of posting style and posting frequency that your audience resonates with and your business benefits from.
I love the nuance that you're bringing to this. What I hear you saying is, don't just take this to mean you need to post every single day. Take this to mean that there's opportunity for you to do better on Instagram, and if you're going to make that investment, make sure that you make it all the way around. Get better at Instagram as well as more frequent, and be thoughtful and intentional about how you do that. I think it's a wonderful message. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And thanks for translating it into, Her Majesty's language.
Everything sounds slightly better in Her Majesty's language.
So much better.
No, thank you. That's everything, and that's all we've got time for. So we'll share tailwindapp.com/Instagram if you're interested in some of the kind of functionality that Tailwind scheduling and analytics bring to this. And of course, go visit the blog post, the study itself, and the follow-up post if you want to see examples of folks who are doing it. And Mike I've shared some sort of exclusive data from this set with Mike, and Mike's planning on a follow-up post next week just to talk about like a little extra corner of this data. And of course, you'll want to go and check Mike out on his own website. What's your URL, Mike?
thesocialmediahat.com.
And there you have it. So thank you, everybody, and goodbye. See you again soon.